The stars of the Veil Nebula burned with colors that no human eye had seen before Earth joined the galaxy. Captain Han Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the UHNS Defiant, watching those distant lights through the main view screen. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes and graying hair at his temples. At 38 years old, he had commanded this small frigate for 3 years without incident. That was about to change. The Defiant was not an impressive ship by galactic standards. She measured only 200 meters from bow to stern, carried a crew of 43 and mounted weapons that other species considered outdated. The shipyards called her a Cheongsan-class frigate, designed for escort duty and diplomatic missions. She was never meant to fight a war. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple contacts," Ensign Lee Hyeri announced from the sensor station. She was fresh from the academy, barely 22, with quick fingers that danced across her console. Big ones, counting. 12 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers, and 1 massive signature I can't quite classify. Commander Park Mina stepped closer to study the tactical display. She was Jiwoo's executive officer, a woman of 35 with steady hands and a mind like a steel trap. "That's a Draxian war fleet," she said quietly. "The big one is probably a battlecruiser." "We're in trouble, sir." Jiwoo nodded slowly. Everyone in human space knew about the Draxians. They were a warrior race who had conquered dozens of worlds through superior firepower and ruthless tactics. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick scales, and believed that might made right. Humanity had carefully avoided conflict with them until now. "They're hailing us," Hyeri reported. "Audio only. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Jiwoo ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was deep and filled with amusement. "Human vessel, this is War Commander Threxall of the Draxian Hegemony, commanding the battlecruiser Worldbreaker. You are trespassing in territory claimed by the Hegemony. Identify yourself and state your pathetic purpose." Mina's jaw tightened at the insult, but Jiwoo kept his voice calm. "War Commander, this is Captain Han Jiwoo of the United Human Naval Ship Defiant. We're on a diplomatic mission to the neutral station at Kepler's Rest. These are international space lanes. We have every right to be here." Laughter echoed through the speakers. It wasn't just Threxall. The Draxian commander had made this conversation public, broadcast across his entire fleet. "International space lanes? Human, there is nothing international about space. There is only what we take and what we hold. Your little toy ship is an insult to my eyes. I give you 1 hour to turn around and flee with whatever dignity your weak species possesses. And if we refuse?" Jiwoo asked. "Then I will crush you like the insect you are, and the galaxy will watch. They will see what happens when humans pretend to be warriors. 1 hour, Captain. I suggest you use it wisely." The channel closed. The bridge fell silent. Every crew member knew what they faced. The Draxian fleet outgunned them by a factor of at least 50 to 1. The Worldbreaker alone could probably destroy the Defiant with a single broadside. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution waiting to happen. "All hands, this is the captain," Jiwoo said, activating the ship-wide intercom. "Report to your stations. I want department heads in the briefing room in 5 minutes." He turned to Mina. "You have the bridge." The briefing room was small, barely large enough for 6 people to sit comfortably. Jiwoo arrived to find his senior officers already waiting. Besides Mina, there was Lieutenant Kim Daeho, the chief engineer. Daeho was only 26, but already had a reputation for working miracles with aging equipment. His hands were always stained with grease, and his eyes held the tired look of someone who spent more time with machines than people. "Options," Jiwoo said without preamble. "We can run," Mina said. "Our pulse drive is faster than their ships over short distances. We could jump to hyperspace before they close the range." "That's retreat," Daeho pointed out. Threxall broadcast that conversation across his fleet. By now it's probably spreading across the entire sector. If we run, everyone will know humans are cowards. "Better alive cowards than dead heroes," Mina countered. "Sir, I'm all for standing our ground when it makes sense, but this is suicide. They have 19 warships to our 1 frigate. Jiwoo looked at Daeho. "Can we fight?" The engineer rubbed his tired eyes. "The pulse drive has an experimental overclock function. The shipyard installed it for testing, but told us never to use it. It could give us short-range jumps, like blinking in and out of normal space. Problem is, each jump strains the reactor. Too many and we risk a containment breach." "How many jumps?" Jiwoo asked. "Maybe 10 before things get dangerous. Maybe 15 if we're lucky. After that," Daeho shrugged. "After that, we're on borrowed time. Mina pulled up a tactical map. There's an asteroid field 3 light minutes from here. Dense coverage, lots of large rocks. If we could lure some of their ships into it, we might be able to use the environment against them. That's a lot of ifs and maybes, Jiwoo said, but he was smiling now just a little. But it's better than nothing. Here's what we're going to do. I'm calling a crew vote. Everyone gets a say. We either run and live with the consequences, or we stay and fight against impossible odds. No shame either way. 20 minutes later, the results came in. 43 crew members, 43 votes. Every single person chose to stay and fight. Back on the bridge, Jiwoo watched the chronometer count down the remaining minutes. Hyeri had mapped the asteroid field with incredible precision. Daeho had the pulse drive ready for overclocking. Mina had identified potential weaknesses in the Draxian formation. They had a plan. It probably wouldn't work, but it was theirs. Captain Admiral Sungjin is on a secure channel, Hyeri reported. Admiral Baek Sungjin commanded the nearest human fleet, 3 days away at maximum speed. His weathered face appeared on a small screen. Captain Jiwoo, I've been briefed on your situation. I'm ordering you to withdraw immediately. Respectfully, Admiral, I'm declining that order, Jiwoo replied. Sungjin sighed. He looked old and tired. I was afraid you'd say that. For the record, this is a mistake. For the record, I wish I was there with you. Give them hell, Captain. Will do, sir. Defiant out. The hour expired. The Draxian fleet began advancing in a massive formation, with the Worldbreaker at its center. They came slowly, confidently like predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Jiwoo activated the open channel. War Commander Threxal, this is Captain Han Jiwoo. Your hour is up. Have you chosen to flee, human? Threxal's voice was smug. No, Jiwoo said quietly. I'm giving you one last chance to leave. You had your chance. You should have taken it. Laughter erupted across the Draxian fleet. They thought it was a joke. They thought the humans had lost their minds. Jiwoo looked at his crew. They were afraid, but they were ready. All hands battle stations. Daeho, engage the pulse drive overclock. Hyeri, plot a course straight at them. Mina, prepare weapons. Aye, Captain, they replied in unison. The Defiant's engines flared bright blue. The small frigate accelerated toward the massive Draxian war fleet at maximum velocity. To the watching galaxy, it looked like madness. To the Draxians, it looked like a desperate suicide run. Only the crew of the Defiant knew the truth. They weren't running toward death. They were bringing the fight to an enemy who had never faced humans before. And the Draxians were about to learn a very painful lesson. The battle for the Veil Nebula had begun. The forward destroyers of the Draxian fleet opened fire first. Bright green plasma bolts streaked across the void, each one carrying enough energy to melt through a city block. The Draxians had fought 100 battles and won them all. They knew how this would end. But the Defiant didn't explode. It vanished. Now, Captain Jiwoo shouted. Lieutenant Daeho hit the pulse drive, and reality twisted around the small frigate. For half a second, the Defiant existed in 2 places at once. Then it reappeared 5 kilometers to the left, completely untouched by the plasma barrage that had just passed through empty space. On the bridge, Ensign Hyeri watched her sensors with wide eyes. It worked. The calculations were perfect. Her fingers flew across her console, already plotting the next jump point. The Draxian destroyers fired again. Green light filled space. Once more, the Defiant blinked out of existence just before impact, reappearing somewhere else entirely. The enemy targeting computers couldn't lock on. Every time they fired, the human ship was somewhere new. They've never seen this before, Commander Mina said with a grim smile. They don't know how to fight it. Jiwoo counted the jumps in his head. 3 so far. They had maybe 12 more before the reactor started failing. Bring us in close to that lead destroyer. Hyeri, I need a jump that puts us within 5 kilometers. Calculating, got it, sir. Ready on your mark. Mina, prepare the railguns, load kinetic penetrators. We're only going to get one shot at this. The Draxian destroyer loomed large on the view screen. It was 3 times the size of the Defiant, bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could stop a nuclear blast. But shields needed time to recharge, and at point-blank range, even simple weapons became deadly. Jump, Jiwoo ordered. The Defiant blinked. When it reappeared, it was so close to the Draxian destroyer that both crews could have seen each other through windows if starships had windows. The distance was less than 5 kilometers. In space combat, that was practically touching. "Fire!" Mina shouted. The railguns launched their payload. Kinetic penetrators were simple weapons, just dense metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds. They had no explosives, no fancy guidance systems, they didn't need them. At relativistic velocity, pure mass became the ultimate weapon. 4 penetrators struck the Draxian destroyer in rapid succession. The first one punched through the shields before they could respond. The second and third tore through armor plating. The fourth hit something critical deep inside the ship, probably the reactor containment. The destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash of white light. Debris scattered in all directions. One of the most powerful warships in the Draxian fleet was simply gone, destroyed in less than 3 seconds. The Defiant's crew erupted in cheers. First blood belonged to them. Jiwoo allowed himself a small smile. "Good work, people, but we're not done yet. Mina, activate the electronic warfare suite. Target their communication network." Mina had spent the last 3 days studying Draxian military protocols. She'd found something interesting in their public communication standards. The Draxians were so confident in their superiority that they'd never bothered to properly secure their tactical network. It was like leaving the back door unlocked, because you were too strong for anyone to dare enter. Her fingers danced across the controls. "I'm injecting false targeting data into their system, making it look like we've deployed fighter craft." On the Draxian heavy cruisers, alarm klaxons began blaring. Their sensors showed small craft approaching from multiple directions. The automated defense systems did what they were programmed to do. They fired. 2 Draxian cruisers opened up with their point defense cannons, tracking targets that didn't exist. But the ships were positioned close together in their formation. When the weapons fired, they weren't shooting at empty space. They were shooting at each other. Green plasma bolts slammed into the port side of one cruiser. Its shields flared and failed. Hull plating buckled and melted. The ship listed to one side, trailing atmosphere and debris. It wasn't destroyed, but it was badly hurt. "They're shooting each other," Yeri said in disbelief. "Only for a few seconds," Mina replied. "They'll figure it out and shut down the automated systems. But we bought ourselves some time." On the World Breakers, Bridge War Commander Threxall was no longer laughing. He stood over his tactical display, his scaled hands gripping the edge hard enough to dent the metal. One destroyer gone, one cruiser damaged, and the human ship was still out there, blinking around like a ghost. "Shut down all automated systems," he roared. "Manual targeting only. And someone explained to me how a single frigate is making fools of the entire hegemony fleet." His subordinates scrambled to obey. The Draxian formation began to change, spreading out to prevent another electronic warfare attack. They switched to manual controls, slower but more reliable. And Threxall made a decision that would change everything. "Charge the main plasma lance," he ordered coldly. "Full power. I want that human ship vaporized. I don't care if we have to destroy half this sector to do it." The Worldbreaker's primary weapon began to glow. Deep in the battlecruiser's core, massive capacitors drew power from the reactor. The plasma lance was designed to crack planets, to boil oceans, to end civilizations. Using it against a single frigate was like using a nuclear bomb to kill an insect. But Threxall was past caring about overkill. On the Defiant, alarms began shrieking. "Captain, I'm reading a massive power buildup on the Worldbreaker," Yeri reported. "It's their main weapon. If that hits us, there won't be enough left to identify." Jiwoo's mind raced. They'd done well so far, better than anyone had a right to expect. But the Draxians were adapting. They'd spread their formation, making another electronic warfare attack useless. They'd switched to manual controls, making the targeting spoofs ineffective. And now they were bringing their biggest gun to bear. "How many jumps do we have left?" he asked Deho. The engineer checked his readouts. 7, maybe 8. After that, the reactor containment starts to degrade. We'll be looking at a meltdown. 7 jumps to survive against 19 warships and a weapon that could destroy them with a single shot. Jiwoo looked at the tactical display, seeing the asteroid field marked in blue on the edge of his screen. It was time for Phase 2 of the plan. "All right, people, we've bloodied their nose. Now we're going to make them chase us into that asteroid field. Harry, plot a course that makes us look damaged. I want them to think we're running scared." "How do we make them think we're damaged?" Harry asked. Jiwoo smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We vent some atmosphere from the non-essential sections, shut down a few external lights, transmit a fake distress signal, give them what they want to see." "That's devious, sir," Mina said with approval. "I like it." The Defiant began its retreat. Clouds of frozen atmosphere vented from the hull. The running lights flickered and died. The ship wobbled slightly, as if the engines were failing. A garbled distress signal broadcast on all frequencies, cut off mid-word as if the transmitter had failed. To the watching Draxians, it looked like their attacks had finally done damage. The human ship was crippled and fleeing. Threxal saw his chance to end this humiliation. He ordered 5 ships to pursue, 3 destroyers and 2 cruisers. They would hunt down the damaged frigate and finish it off, while the Worldbreaker and the rest of the fleet moved to cut off any escape. The Defiant limped toward the asteroid field with 5 Draxian warships in pursuit. Behind them, the main Draxian fleet repositioned to trap their prey. And throughout the sector, other species watched on their long-range sensors, witnessing something they'd never seen before. A human ship was fighting back, and winning. "Captain, they're taking the bait," Hieri confirmed. 5 ships in pursuit, closing fast. Jiwoo leaned back in his chair. His crew was exhausted, his ship was barely holding together, and they were leading 5 enemy warships into an asteroid field while another 14 waited to cut off their escape. By any reasonable measure, they should already be dead. But they weren't dead. They were still fighting. And that made all the difference. "Take us in," he ordered quietly. "Let's show them what happens when you corner a human." The asteroid field was a graveyard of dead worlds. Massive rocks drifted through space, some the size of mountains, others as large as moons. They'd been here for millions of years, slowly grinding against each other in an endless dance. It was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. The Defiant plunged into the field like a fish diving into coral. Ensign Hieri's navigation was flawless. She'd spent hours mapping every rock, every trajectory, every dangerous intersection. Her fingers moved across the controls with absolute certainty, guiding the frigate through gaps that looked impossibly narrow. Behind them, the 5 pursuing Draxian ships followed, 3 destroyers and 2 heavy cruisers, each one much larger than the Defiant. They were confident. They thought they were hunting damaged prey. "They're entering the field," Commander Mina reported, "still in pursuit. They're not backing off." "Good," Captain Jiwoo said. "Deho, are the gravitic emitters ready?" "Ready, sir." Lieutenant Deho's voice came through the intercom from engineering. "But I have to warn you, we're pushing them way beyond their design limits. They're meant for moving small rocks during mining operations, not shifting asteroids the size of cities." "Will it work?" "It'll work," Deho confirmed. "Once, maybe twice. Then the emitters will burn out. Once is all we need. Stand by." The Draxian ships were struggling. Their larger size made navigation difficult. They had to slow down, constantly adjusting course to avoid collisions. The Defiant, smaller and more nimble, danced between the rocks with ease. "Target acquired," Hieri said. "That big one dead ahead. It's on a stable orbit, but if we destabilize it..." Jiwoo saw it on the tactical display. A massive asteroid, easily 5 kilometers across, drifting in a predictable path, and behind it, one of the Draxian destroyers was closing in, too focused on their prey to notice the danger. "Do it," Jiwoo ordered. The Defiant's gravitic emitters flared to life. Invisible waves of force reached out across space, grabbing hold of the massive asteroid. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then slowly at first, but building rapidly, the asteroid began to shift. The Draxian destroyer saw it too late. The mountain-sized rock was no longer moving on its predictable path. It was coming straight at them. The destroyer's captain tried to change course, but ships that large couldn't turn quickly. They needed time and space, and they had neither. The collision was catastrophic. The asteroid struck the destroyer amidships, moving with the force of a god's hammer. Shields flared brilliant blue for half a second before failing completely. The destroyer's hull buckled and tore. Metal screamed. Atmosphere vented in great plumes of frozen crystals. The destroyer split in 2. Both halves spun away, trailing debris and bodies. It was dead before its crew even had time to send a distress signal. 2 down, Mina said grimly. 3 to go. But the remaining Draxian ships were learning. They spread out, giving themselves more room to maneuver. The two cruisers began firing their main guns, not at the Defiant, but at the asteroids themselves. If they couldn't navigate the field safely, they'd blast a path through it. Green plasma bolts shattered rocks into fragments. The cruisers advanced slowly but steadily, creating corridors of open space. It was brutal and effective, and it created a new problem. "Captain, the debris field is getting worse," Yeri warned. "Thousands of smaller fragments moving in unpredictable patterns. My navigation solutions are breaking down." The Defiant shuddered as a piece of rock the size of a car glanced off their shields. Then another hit. And another. The shields were holding, but they were draining power fast. "Mina, target those cruisers," Jiwoo ordered. "Railguns, precision shots. I want to hit their weapon systems, not their main hull." "That's a difficult shot in this debris field," Mina replied. But her hands were already moving, calculating trajectories and timing. "Give me a stable platform for 3 seconds. Yeri?" "Working on it now." The Defiant slipped into a pocket of clear space just for a moment. It was enough. Mina fired. The railguns spat their kinetic penetrators across space. At this range, with proper targeting, they were surgical instruments. The first penetrator struck one cruiser's main plasma cannon, tearing through its power coupling. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks. The second shot hit the other cruiser's targeting array, blinding its fire control systems. Both Draxian cruisers were still alive, but they'd lost their ability to blast through the asteroid field. They were trapped in a maze with an enemy who knew every turn. "The last two destroyers are pulling back," Yeri reported. "They're trying to leave the field." Jiwoo watched them retreat on the tactical display. Smart choice. They'd seen 3 of their ships destroyed or disabled, and decided survival was better than pride. But they wouldn't get far. Outside the asteroid field, War Commander Threxal was watching his carefully laid trap turn into a disaster. Half his pursuit force was gone. The human ship was still fighting, and worst of all, the entire galaxy was watching. He made a decision born of rage and desperation. "All ships move to intercept those destroyers, and charge the main plasma lance. I don't care what's in the way. I want that human ship dead." "Commander, our own ships are in the line of fire," one of his officers protested. Threxal's clawed hand lashed out, striking the officer across the face. "Did I ask for your opinion?" "Fire when ready." The Worldbreaker's main weapon reached full charge. The plasma lance was a weapon of terrible beauty, a beam of superheated matter contained by magnetic fields, capable of burning through anything in its path. It was designed to destroy space stations and crack planetary defenses. Threxal targeted the center of the asteroid field where the human ship was last seen. He didn't care about collateral damage. He didn't care about his own ships caught in the blast radius. He only cared about ending this humiliation. "Fire!" The plasma lance fired. A beam of green energy, bright as a star, tore through space at the speed of light. It hit the asteroid field like the finger of an angry god. Rocks vaporized instantly. The beam carved a corridor of destruction through the field, destroying everything in its path, including one of the Draxian cruisers. The friendly fire was instant and total. The cruiser didn't have time to scream. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized by its own fleet's weapon. And behind it, one of the retreating destroyers caught the edge of the blast. Its shields failed, its hull melted, and it died in flames. On the Defiant, alarms shrieked. "Emergency jump now!" Jiwoo shouted. Deho engaged the pulse drive one last time. The reactor screamed in protest. Warning lights lit up across every panel. But it worked. The Defiant blinked out of existence a fraction of a second before the plasma beam reached its position. They reappeared at the edge of the asteroid field, shields flickering, hull scorched, but alive. "Pulse drive is dead," Deho reported, his voice strained. "Reactor containment is at 40%. We've got maybe an hour before we lose main power." "Status on the Draxian fleet?" Jiwoo asked. Yeri checked her sensors. "The Worldbreaker is still operational. 3 cruisers and 5 destroyers remaining. But sir, Threxal just killed his own people. He destroyed a cruiser and a destroyer with friendly fire." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They'd reduced the Draxian fleet from 19 ships to 9. Half of Threxal's force was gone, some destroyed by human weapons, some by Draxian weapons aimed by a commander too angry to care about his own people. "He's lost his mind," Mina said quietly. "That makes him more dangerous," Jiwoo nodded. They'd accomplished the impossible. They'd survived this long against overwhelming odds. They'd proven that humans could fight, could win against supposedly superior opponents. But the price was mounting. His ship was dying. His crew was exhausted, and they still faced 9 enemy warships, including a battlecruiser that had just demonstrated its willingness to destroy anything in its path. "Sir, what are our orders?" Mina asked. Jiwoo looked at his crew. They were battered, bleeding, exhausted. But they were still fighting, still believing, still trusting him to lead them through this. "We finish this," he said simply. "One way or another, we end it here." The Draxian fleet formed a perfect sphere around the Defiant, keeping their distance but closing off every escape route. War Commander Threxal had learned his lesson. No more tricks, no more clever tactics. He would simply surround the human ship and pound it into dust from multiple angles. The Worldbreaker sat at the center of the formation, its main weapon recharging. Around it, 3 heavy cruisers and 5 destroyers moved into position. They would fire in waves, never all at once, ensuring that no matter where the Defiant tried to hide, there would always be weapons pointed at it. On the Defiant's bridge, the crew worked in near silence. There was nothing left to say. Everyone knew what came next. "Power reserves at 30%, Lieutenant Deho reported from engineering. His voice sounded tired, stretched thin. "Life support is failing in sections 3 through 7. Medical bay is overwhelmed. And, sir, the reactor containment is cracking. I can keep it stable for maybe another hour. After that, we're looking at a core breach." Captain Jiwoo absorbed the information without expression. Around him, his bridge crew looked like ghosts. Ensign Hyeri had a makeshift bandage wrapped around her head, where debris had cut her during the asteroid field battle. Commander Mina's uniform was torn and stained with blood, though she insisted she was fine. Even the view screen showed cracks from where an explosion had nearly shattered it. "Options," Jiwoo said quietly. "We could launch the escape pods," Mina offered, though her tone suggested she didn't believe it. "Get the crew to safety before the end." "The Draxians would just destroy the pods," Hyeri said bitterly. "Threxal isn't taking prisoners, not after what we did to his fleet." "We still have weapons," Mina continued. "Not many. Maybe enough for one more strike if we can get close. But the pulse drive is gone. We can't jump anymore. We'd have to fly straight at them on conventional engines." "That's suicide," Hyeri said. "Everything's suicide at this point," Mina replied. "At least this way we go down fighting." Jiwoo stood and walked to the view screen. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. The Draxian ships were visible as small points of light, their weapons charging. In another minute, maybe 2, they would open fire. And this time there would be no escape. He thought about his crew. 43 people when they started. 31 still alive now. 12 dead. Including some whose names he'd memorized this morning when reviewing casualty reports. Young men and women who'd trusted him to lead them. Who'd voted to stay and fight when they could have run? "All hands, this is the captain," he said, activating the ship-wide channel. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You all know our situation. We're damaged. We're outnumbered. We're probably going to die in the next few minutes. I want you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. You fought like warriors. You never gave up. And whatever happens next, the galaxy will remember what we did here." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I'm going to give you one last choice. We can try to surrender. Maybe the Draxians will show mercy. Or we can make one final run at the Worldbreaker. Try to take that battlecruiser with us. I won't order anyone to die. This has to be your choice. Vote now. You have 2 minutes." The responses came back within seconds. Medical staff with their hands full of wounded. Engineers covered in burns and radiation exposure. Gunners at their stations. Navigation techs. Communications officers. Every single person still breathing on the Defiant. 31 votes. 31 decisions. And once again, every single person chose to fight. Jiwoo felt something tight in his chest. Pride, maybe. Or sadness, or both. "All right then," he said. "Deho, I need every bit of power you can give me. Shut down everything that isn't engines, shields, or weapons. Life support, gravity, even the lights. Everything goes to the final run." "Understood, sir." Redirecting all power now. The lights on the bridge dimmed to emergency red. The gentle hum of climate control fell silent. Gravity flickered and died, leaving everyone floating in their harnesses. The only sounds were breathing and the steady beep of the tactical display. "Hyeri, I need a course," Jiwoo ordered. "Straight line to the Worldbreaker. Fastest possible speed." plotting now. Her fingers moved across her console slower than usual. She was exhausted, in pain, but still working, still doing her job. "Sir, I found something." There's a small gap in their formation. One of the destroyers is out of position by maybe 200 meters. If we time it exactly right, we might slip through. Might. 70% chance, Yeri said. Better odds than we've had all day. Jiwoo smiled despite everything. I'll take those odds. Mina, load every weapon we have left. Kinetic penetrators, missiles, mining charges, everything. When we get in range of the world breaker, I want to hit it with everything at once. All weapons armed and ready, Mina confirmed. Sir, it's been an honor. Not yet, Jiwoo said. Save that for when we're dead. Right now, we've still got work to do. The Defiance engines ignited at full power. Every reactor, every power cell, everything Daeho could coax from the dying ship. The frigate accelerated toward the Draxian formation like a missile, small and fast and desperate. The Draxians saw them coming and opened fire. Green plasma bolts filled space, creating a wall of death. The Defiance forward shields caught the first impacts, flaring bright blue. Then they caught more and more. The shields held for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Then they failed. Plasma fire raked the Defiance hull. Armor plating melted and peeled away. Entire sections of the ship vaporized. Alarms screamed. Fire suppression systems activated and failed. People died at their stations, burned or blown into space or crushed by debris, but the Defiant kept coming. In engineering, Daeho worked alone now. His entire team was dead or unconscious. He stood at the reactor controls, manually overriding every safety system, pushing the core beyond anything it was designed to handle. Coolant warnings blared. Radiation levels climbed into lethal ranges. He could feel the heat through his suit, could taste metal in his mouth. Just a little more, he whispered to the ship. Just get them close. Just a little more. The Defiant found the gap Hieri had identified. For one perfect moment, the firing solution cleared. They were through the formation, inside the Draxian defenses with a straight line to the world breaker. Range to target, Jiwoo shouted over the chaos. 8 kilometers, Hieri called back. 7-6! Fire everything, Jiwoo ordered. Mina's hands moved across her console one final time. Every weapon the Defiant possessed fired at once. Kinetic penetrators. Missiles with conventional warheads. Mining charges meant for breaking asteroids. Even the emergency flares. Everything they had. All of it aimed at the massive battlecruiser filling their view screen. The World Breaker's point defense systems activated, destroying most of the incoming ordnance. Explosions lit up space, but not all of them were stopped. 3 kinetic penetrators punched through the defensive screen, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The first penetrator hit the World Breaker's forward shields and shattered them. The second struck the armor plating and carved a deep wound through the hull. The third, by luck or fate or something else, found a weak point. It penetrated deep into the battlecruiser's engineering section and struck something critical. Maybe a power conduit, maybe a fuel line. The result was the same. Secondary explosions bloomed along the World Breaker's hull. Internal fires raged through compartments. And deep in its core, the massive reactor that powered the ship began to fail. The Defiant drifted past the dying battlecruiser, its own reactor finally giving up. On the bridge, Jiwoo watched through a cracked view screen as the World Breaker began to list. Fires burned in the void where atmosphere vented from ruptured hulls. Did we get it? Mina asked quietly. I think so, Jiwoo replied. I think we actually did it. And then the World Breaker's reactor went critical and the entire sector filled with light. The World Breaker died like a star being born. Its reactor breach created a sphere of superheated plasma that expanded at incredible speed. The light was so bright that sensors across the sector automatically dimmed to prevent damage. The blast wave caught 2 Draxian destroyers that had been moving in to support their flagship, vaporizing them instantly. A third destroyer and one of the heavy cruisers were caught at the edge of the explosion. Their shields overwhelmed in seconds. Their hulls melted like wax in a furnace. The Defiant, already drifting away from the dying battlecruiser, caught the shockwave. The small frigate tumbled through space like a leaf in a hurricane. What remained of its hull screamed under the stress. Bulkheads failed. Compartments vented atmosphere. Emergency systems tried to respond and couldn't. On the bridge, Captain Han Jiwoo regained consciousness slowly. His head throbbed. Something warm and wet ran down his face. Blood, probably. The emergency restraints had saved his life. holding him in his chair when the blast wave hit. Around him, the bridge was dark except for a few flickering emergency lights. "Report," he tried to say, but his voice came out as a whisper. He tried again, louder. "Report." "Captain?" Commander Mina's voice came from somewhere to his left. She sounded dazed. "Sir, I'm alive." He's unconscious but breathing. "I can't raise anyone else on the bridge." Jiwoo released his restraints and floated in the zero gravity. The artificial gravity was gone along with most other systems. He pulled himself over to Mina's station. She had a nasty cut on her forehead and her left arm hung at an odd angle, probably broken. But she was working her console, trying to get any information she could. "Ship status?" Jiwoo asked. "Bad," Mina said simply. "Reactor is offline. Main power is gone. Life support is failing. We're venting atmosphere from at least 15 breaches that I can count. Weapons are offline. Engines are offline. We're dead in space, sir." "Casualties?" Mina's voice cracked. "Unknown. Communications are down. But, sir, engineering isn't responding. Neither is medical. If they're in the sections that lost atmosphere, she didn't need to finish." Jiwoo understood. Lieutenant Daeho had been in engineering, pushing the reactor beyond its limits to give them enough power for the final run. If that section had been breached, he was gone. "What about the Draxians?" Jiwoo asked. Mina managed to pull up a sensor reading on emergency power. "The Worldbreaker is gone. Completely destroyed. Looks like 4 other ships caught in the blast. The remaining Draxian fleet?" She paused, studying the display. 2 cruisers and 2 destroyers. They're maintaining distance, not advancing. Why aren't they finishing us off? "I don't know, sir. Maybe they think we're already dead. Or maybe..." She trailed off, listening to something on her emergency headset. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission. It's coming from the Draxian ships. They're hailing us." Jiwoo pulled himself to the communication station and activated what was left of their receiver. A voice came through, speaking in heavily accented human standard. It wasn't Threxel. The war commander was dead, vaporized with his flagship. "Human vessel Defiant, this is Ship Captain Vekran of the Draxian cruiser Stormclaw. We observe that you are heavily damaged and adrift. We are offering terms." Jiwoo exchanged glances with Mina. "Terms? From the Draxians?" "This is Captain Han Jiwoo. What kind of terms?" "A ceasefire," Vekran replied. "We will not fire upon you or any rescue vessels that come to your aid. In exchange, we ask only 2 things. First, you allow us to recover our dead without interference. Second, you record this battle accurately in your archives. No lies, no propaganda, just the truth of what happened here." Jiwoo couldn't hide his surprise. "Why?" There was a long pause before Vekran answered. "Because you fought with honor, human. You faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. You destroyed 11 of our ships with tactics and courage. War Commander Threxel was a fool who underestimated you, and it cost him his life and the lives of many good warriors. The galaxy has watched this battle. They have seen humans fight. We would be greater fools to continue fighting you without cause. Your commander issued a challenge," Jiwoo said carefully. "We answered it. If you want to recover your dead and leave in peace, I accept your terms. Then it is agreed. May we meet again under better circumstances, Captain Jiwoo." The channel closed. Jiwoo floated in the darkness of his ruined bridge, trying to process what had just happened. They'd survived. Against all odds, against logic and reason, his ship and crew had survived. "Mina, can you send a distress signal?" "Already done, sir. Admiral Sungjin's fleet should receive it within the hour. They'll be here in about 12 hours if they push their engines hard." 12 hours. Jiwoo hoped they had that long. "Start organizing rescue parties. Find everyone who's still alive. Get them to sections with intact life support." The next hours were a nightmare of search and rescue. The damage to the Defiant was worse than anyone had imagined. Entire sections were simply gone, blown away or melted. The crew found survivors trapped in sealed compartments, injured and terrified but alive. They also found the dead Lieutenant Kim Daeho was found at his station in engineering, still strapped into his chair. The radiation exposure had killed him, but not before he'd kept the reactor stable long enough for the final attack. Jiwoo stood over the young engineer's body and felt tears freeze on his cheeks in the cold, airless compartment. Final count: 28 survivors out of 43. 15 dead, their bodies recovered and treated with respect. The Defiant herself was a total loss. The ship that had fought so hard, that had carried them through the impossible, would never fly again. Admiral Baek Sung-jin arrived ahead of schedule, his fleet pushing their engines to the breaking point. When he boarded the Defiant and saw the damage, the old admiral's face went pale. He pulled Jiwoo aside, away from the rescue crews. "Captain, I've been in the Navy for 40 years. I've seen 100 battles. But this," he shook his head. "You destroyed a Draxian war fleet. A whole fleet. With one frigate. Do you understand what that means?" "It means 15 of my people are dead, sir," Jiwoo replied quietly. Sung-jin gripped his shoulder. "It also means that humanity just proved itself to the galaxy. The recordings of this battle are spreading across every communication network. Other species are watching and reassessing everything they thought they knew about humans. You've changed everything, Captain. You and your crew. The survivors of the Defiant were evacuated to the fleet's medical ships. The wounded received treatment. The exhausted were given rest. And the Defiant herself was taken under tow, heading not to a scrapyard but to Earth orbit, where she would be preserved as a memorial. 3 months later, Captain Han Ji-woo stood on a stage in front of thousands of people and representatives from dozens of alien species. He wore his dress uniform, newly promoted to Commodore, though he'd asked them not to. Beside him stood Commander Park Mina and Ensign Lee Hyeri, both recovered from their injuries. The rest of the crew sat in places of honor, 28 survivors who would carry this story for the rest of their lives. They unveiled a monument that day, built jointly by human and Draxian engineers. It stood at the battle site, a pillar of metal and stone that would orbit that point in space forever. Carved into it were the names of everyone who died that day, human and Draxian alike. War Commander Threxel's name was there too, because despite his arrogance and mistakes, he'd died as a warrior. The inscription read simply, "Here. Courage met courage and honor answered honor." In the years that followed, the Battle of Vale Nebula became legend. Every military academy studied it. Every young officer learned the tactics. The phrase "Remember the Defiant" became a rallying cry across human space. Commander Mina received her own ship, a new frigate named Resolute. She trained the next generation of officers, passing on the lessons learned in battle. Ensign Hyeri, now Lieutenant Hyeri, became the Navy's leading expert on tactical navigation. Her navigation software, based on her experiences in the asteroid field, saved countless lives. And Captain Jiwoo, now Commodore Jiwoo, commanded a carrier group, but never forgot the lessons of that day. He kept a picture on his desk of the Defiant's crew, all 43 of them taken the week before the battle. Every day he looked at it and remembered what they'd accomplished together. The galaxy had learned something important that day. Humans might be newcomers to space. Their ships might be smaller. Their weapons might be simpler. But they had something that technology couldn't match: the will to fight against impossible odds, the intelligence to turn disadvantages into advantages, and the courage to stand their ground when any reasonable species would have run. The Draxian hegemony never attacked human space again. They'd learned their lesson at a terrible cost. Other species, watching and learning, chose diplomacy over conflict. The Vale Nebula incident didn't make humans feared exactly, but it made them respected. And sometimes respect was more valuable than fear. 30 years later, an old man stood in the observation deck of the memorial station in Earth orbit, looking at the preserved wreck of the UHNS Defiant. Han Ji-woo, retired now, visited the ship every year on the anniversary of the battle. He traced his fingers along the scarred hull, remembering. A young ensign approached him fresh from the academy. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you,